warm welcome to everyone that's joining us for the 10th annual Aberdeen Houston Gateway, both in Aberdeen and Houston and from across the globe. There's people from far and wide logging on. Some of you will be watching this live and some of you will be watching it in playback. So whether you're watching it live or in playback, we hope this gives a flavour of some of the wonderful opportunities that the City of Houston has for supply chain companies, growth opportunities both in oil and gas and transition energies. So without further ado, I would like to set the scene for today. So yesterday we looked at a market update and also doing business in Houston. Today we'll be really showcasing a bit of energy transition, a bit of helping hands of doing business in Houston, and we'll then be going on to the fantastic case studies of growth companies, EnerQuip, Motive and Add Energy that are great showcases to know about. So without further ado, I would like to welcome back the Greater Houston Partnership that travelled all the way to Aberdeen for this event, and we've been doing events offline throughout the week. And yesterday, a lot of you met Jeffrey Blair, International Director for Europe, Middle East and Africa. And today, I'm delighted to introduce for the first time his colleague, Jose Becerro. And he is the Senior Director of Energy 2.0. Now, what is Energy 2.0? He'll tell you more about that, but it basically is Houston's transition program. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Jose, and I hope you'll all find this afternoon's session very useful.
Yeah, so why don't I introduce...
Yes, sorry, I will put you back to our chair again, as I did yesterday, to be politically correct. And thank you to my good friend, Jeffrey Blair, who will then introduce his colleague. Sorry about that. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brett. So, hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back here chairing today's session of the Aberdeen Houston Gateway. And I'm going to get things started because we have a wonderful list of speakers again today, and starting out with my colleague Jose Becerro, who serves as the Senior Director of Global Energy 2.0 for the Greater Houston Partnership. Jose joined the partnership in April of 2020 with 15 years of experience in business and project development, with a majority of his work centered around energy and clean tech sectors. And it's been a real pleasure working with Jose since he started. He has a wealth of knowledge and experience, and that's exactly what we needed at the partnership in this particular area. So not to steal any of his thunder, I'm going to turn things right over to my colleague, Jose. Jose?
Thank you, Jeffrey. And I think we're going to play a quick video first.
Houston, Texas, a city built on innovation, opportunity, leadership, a city known globally as the energy capital of the world. We create the energy that makes modern living possible, but the world is changing, and humankind faces a dual challenge. Economic opportunity and quality of life are improving around the globe. To support that growth, we will need more energy, now and for decades to come. At the same time, we must reduce greenhouse gas emissions and respond to the effects of climate change. Houston is committed to tackling this dual challenge head-on. It is both a responsibility and a great opportunity, We are ready to create energy that's cleaner while balancing affordability and reliability. Oil and gas companies are investing in low carbon and net zero solutions. Leading wind, solar, and biofuels companies already operate from Houston. And we are scaling technologies that run smarter and more efficiently with a reduced carbon footprint. We are driving breakthrough innovations and large-scale deployment around solutions like carbon capture and sequestration, hydrogen, and energy storage. No other city in the world is better positioned than Houston to take this dual challenge and turn it into opportunity and deploy these solutions around the world. The city of innovators and problem solvers focused on the future. Houston, Texas, leading the global energy transition.
Well, thank you again for all of you to attending the program today. Thank you again, Jeffrey and Brett, for organizing this 10-year anniversary of the Aberdeen Houston Gateway. It's been a great trip. My first trip to Scotland to see what's happening here on the ground in Aberdeen. A lot of great lessons learned that we can take back to Houston, and a lot of, I think, lessons learned that we can share with our colleagues and partners here in Aberdeen. What I wanted to do today is sort of set the stage for what is happening on the ground in Houston in terms of our energy transition efforts. We'll also hear from Moji Karimi, the CEO of Sambita Factory, as a great example of the innovation and an emerging energy technology startup that is growing out of Houston. But first of all, I wanted to start off by saying, to the point that the video provided, Houston is the headquarters and intellectual capital for virtually every segment of the energy industry, including exploration, production, transmission, marketing, supply, and technology. As the global energy industry continues to evolve, Houston is uniquely positioned to lead the transition to a cleaner, more efficient, and more sustainable, lower carbon world. So with that, we'll move on to the next slide. And I believe Jeffrey provided some of these numbers yesterday, but just wanted to dive in a bit more into the details. Houston is the energy capital of the world. We also believe strongly that it's leading the world in energy transition, primarily because of the concentration of major energy companies, particularly the headquarters of energy majors. We have 18 Fortune 500 energy corporate headquarters, over 4,600 energy companies, 250,000 energy workers. The energy industry in Houston comprises approximately a third of our regional gross domestic product. In fact, 250,000 direct energy jobs. We have a total of 1.2 million energy jobs that are because of the energy sector. So induced and indirect totals to about 1.2 million. So about a third of our workforce as well is derived from the energy sector. Something that I'll touch on in a few minutes is what we've been doing to really build a pipeline of new energy technology startups by attracting new startup development organizations and platforms, such as incubators and accelerators, to help new startups get off the ground. So with that, we'll move to the next slide. We feel Houston is the leader in energy transition for a number of reasons, particularly the resources and assets we have in place already because of the existing energy sector. So our talent, expertise, research and development capabilities, our access to capital, our ability to scale new technologies, our ability to influence and develop new public policies to support the transition of energy, and of course, the momentum that we're generating on the ground. I'll go into a bit more detail on the next slide. So first of all, we have a critical mass of energy engineering talent and industry expertise. We have world-class energy research institutions. We actually have 3 R1 or top tier research universities in the Houston region, including Texas A&M, Rice University, and University of Houston. All world-class energy research institutions that are churning out new innovations and commercializing new technologies. We also have significant energy capital available in the forms of venture capital, private equity, and project finance. Many of these investors in Houston are quickly pivoting to new Energy 2.0 opportunities, ESG opportunities, low carbon solutions. this is a tremendous resource that we have available in Houston that are looking for investment opportunities, not just for homegrown Houston companies, but companies all over the world, including here in Aberdeen. One of the biggest differentiators in Houston compared to other energy innovation hubs, in my opinion, is our ability to quickly upscale new technologies for the energy sector. What we're seeing in Houston is with our pipeline of energy tech startups, those startups are able to partner with energy majors on pilot projects and demonstration projects. Moji will talk a little bit about some Vita Factories partnership efforts in that regard as well. And with our efforts to establish new startup development organizations focused specifically on energy technology innovation, we've essentially created a landing pad for new clean tech and energy 2.0 startups. On the policy side, our mayor, Sylvester Turner, about 3 years ago, launched the city's first ever climate action plan. There's a number of specific goals in that plan that are creating new market opportunities for energy technology companies and energy transition startups. One of the interesting factors of what's happening in the Houston region is not only are we a major oil and gas economy, but we also are leading the state of Texas and the United States in renewable energy deployment. Currently, we have about 42 utility scale solar projects under development, approximately 12 gigawatts of solar power, 41 battery energy storage projects, approximately 7 gigawatts, and about two wind projects that are under development as we speak. Of the almost 16 gigawatts of utility solar projects that have already received final approvals, interconnection agreements with our statewide electric grid, approximately 6 gigawatts are located in the 12 county Houston region. So you're talking about almost 40% of all utility scale solar projects in the state of Texas are happening in the 12 county Houston region, so, which is very significant. Next slide. So we are, of course, an oil and gas capital, but we're also a clean energy capital. We have over 200 clean energy companies operating in Houston today. Approximately 100 solar companies, actually 150, or that list continues to grow, 150 solar companies, 30 wind energy companies, and over 80 digital technology companies that are specifically designing new technology solutions for the energy sector, especially around big data analytics, high performance computing, cloud computing, AI, machine learning, and robotics. So we're seeing a lot of activity on the digital tech for energy. Next slide. And speaking of digital tech, we are not only the energy capital of the world, we are also a technology capital. We have over, in fact, now 9,000 tech companies in the Houston region. And the trend in the last 18 to 24 months has, we've seen large major tech companies establishing a significant presence in the Houston region. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, in fact, announced last year their global headquarters is relocating from Silicon Valley to Houston. Google Cloud has several hundred people on the ground working on cloud computing. AWS actually has almost 2,000 workers in Houston working on cloud computing, as does Microsoft. So this is a tremendous asset for the Houston economy. It helps us diversify our regional economy, but it's also helping to accelerate the transition of the energy sector. Next slide. A question we get asked a lot, companies are very interested in moving to Houston. A lot of companies from the West Coast of the United States, the East Coast, are interested in moving to Texas for its low-cost business environment, high quality of life, low cost of living. But and also international companies as well are looking increasingly to move to Texas for all the same reasons. But one question we get asked a lot is what metro area within Texas is best suited and the best fit for our business and our corporate culture. Well, what's interesting about Houston is, we have a high concentration of higher education institutions. Of course, we have 3-1 top tier universities. We have tremendous amount of talent that's being developed as we speak that are graduating out of our universities, about 430,000 students. We have a critical mass of energy companies and energy workers, and you see how that compares to other major innovation hubs in Texas like Austin and Dallas. The tech industry, I think this surprises a lot of our outside audiences who are thinking that, maybe Austin and Dallas are bigger tech hubs. In fact, Houston is one of the largest tech hubs in the United States. Over 9,000 companies now, 235,000 tech workers. And we have the largest clean energy economy in the state of Texas. Over 200 companies and over 60,000 clean energy jobs, which roughly breaks down to about half of those jobs are energy efficiency installation jobs. The rest of them are solar, wind, and battery jobs. So a very high concentration of the clean energy sector. It ranks 7th nationally in the United States for our clean energy economy. Next slide. On the startup development capacity that we've developed, we've had several major announcements over the last 2 years. In fact, one of our biggest announcements, which I'll talk a little bit in a couple of slides, is Greentown Labs. It's their first ever expansion outside of their headquarters and outside of Boston, Massachusetts. We also have several corporate energy major incubators and accelerator programs that have launched. Halliburton Labs has an in-house clean tech incubator that's located on their headquarter campus. Shell Technology Ventures has a huge presence in Houston, as does Chevron Tech Ventures. We also have other private incubators and accelerators like the Mass Challenge, Plug and Play. The ION is a brand new facility affiliated with Rice University, and also Capital Factory. So just the concentration of startup development platforms and resources we have available now is really spurring the growth and development of new startups within this energy technology space. Next slide. Some recent announcements. We've had many in the Energy 2.0 realm. The biggest announcement we had just about a month ago was ExxonMobil announced they're moving their global headquarters from Irving, Texas, which is the Dallas-Fort Worth area, to Houston, Texas. And not only is Exxon relocating their headquarters, they're actually restructuring internally as a company. They're moving from about 8 separate divisions down to 3. They're going to do upstream research and development. They're going to do kind of midstream gasoline products and services. And then the new division that they've consolidated into is their low carbon solutions business. Exxon, one of the key factors in the company's decision to relocate to Houston was the fact that they are going to build a whole new business model around low carbon solutions. The company felt that Houston, Texas was the place that they needed to be in order to rebrand and reorganize this newly structured corporation. So we're very excited about ExxonMobil's announcement. Archaea Energy is a renewable natural gas company. They have anaerobic digester facilities located in the Houston region. They also announced their headquarters is relocating to Houston as well. NRG, a major utility, is relocating from New Jersey to Houston. They had a big presence already with Reliant and some of their divisions, but now their headquarters is now in Houston. We talked about Halliburton Labs, Greentown Labs, and a new research initiative that launched at Rice University is called the Welch Institute for Advanced Materials. This is one of the largest advanced materials research institutes in the United States. This is funded by the Welch Foundation. It was the largest grant ever handed out by the Welch Foundation. It was a $100 million grant. So we are very proud and excited that Rice University is going to be playing a key leadership role in the development of new advanced materials, which will support the energy sector, which will support life sciences and healthcare and manufacturing and many other industry sectors in the Houston region. So just a great resource that we have now at Rice University. Next slide. We also have a strong pipeline of energy tech startups that are growing very rapidly. I'm going to let Moji talk about some Vita Factory and provide all the details there. But we also have companies like Solugen, which is focused on high performance chemicals from plant-derived substitutes and feedstocks. Solugen has raised over $500 million US dollars already, and they're about to close on another $1 billion. So definitely getting into the unicorn status of their startup development. Syzygy Plasmonics, they develop photocatalytic chemical reactors to revolutionize the industrial gas, chemical, and energy industries. Fast-growing startup as well. And also Utility Global is actually an economic development project we worked on at the partnership. We recruited Utility Global from Utah, and they are a green hydrogen technology company. They are pioneering new electrolyzers to convert water to green hydrogen. And so this company is already moving into their pilot production phase. So we're very proud about Utility Global's growth and relocation to the Houston region. I wanted to also mention, I don't have a slide on this, but I also wanted to talk about 2 other announcements that are still kind of in the development process. And I think it's highly relevant for the audience from Aberdeen with what's happening at the harbor and the interest in moving into green hydrogen and other new Energy 2.0 projects. Houston, Texas, as many of you know, is already a major hydrogen hub. In fact, Houston, we have over 50 hydrogen production facilities in the Houston region. We have 900 miles of hydrogen pipelines. We produce about 4 million metric tons of hydrogen a year. This is about a third of all U.S. production of hydrogen. So we are a very large hydrogen hub. It is gray hydrogen derived from natural gas. The big opportunity we have in Houston is to develop a new green hydrogen hub. And so this is something that the partnership has been working with other organizations and stakeholders around the region. We've assembled a working group of 120 stakeholders to develop our long-term roadmap to establish a green hydrogen hub. And we are also pursuing federal funding. There's a new infrastructure bill that recently passed at the federal level in the United States, and there's funding available for 4 separate green hydrogen hubs that will provide about $2 billion per hub. And so Houston, Texas, we feel we are well organized to pursue one of these funding opportunities and establish a green hydrogen hub in Houston. So more to discuss on this effort, and hopefully we'll have an announcement soon on that funding opportunity. Similarly, we are also pursuing a carbon hub or industrial carbon hub, and ExxonMobil has really been taking the lead on this opportunity. Exxon announced a few months ago that they believe that we can establish an industrial carbon hub in the Houston Ship Channel and potentially store up to 100 million metric tons of carbon each year. ExxonMobil believes that it'll cost about $100 billion US. And so we are also pursuing funding from the federal government for this opportunity. One thing that Exxon has done is they've assembled a industry stakeholder group of approximately 14 industry players that will come together in the Houston Ship Channel to link together carbon emitting facilities, build common carbon CO2 pipeline infrastructure, and also to build out injection wells in the Houston Ship Channel, which just so happens has some of the best geological formation available to store CO2 long-term and permanently underground. The estimates are that we can store up to 1 trillion metric tons of CO2 in the Houston Ship Channel. And so we believe that this is a huge opportunity for our energy industry to develop a whole new business model around carbon capture and storage, but also carbon as a service. So we're very excited about this carbon hub opportunity. It's actually one of the things that I am very interested in learn from the UK and Scotland on some of the carbon hub projects that have already kicked off here in this part of the world. So just wanted to mention these 2 new opportunities that are in process and under development. Next slide.
Okay, and just to let you know that you're almost at time.
Yeah, and I think I'm almost done here. I just want to talk a little bit about Greentown Labs, because this has really become the epicenter for what's happening in energy transition in Houston. So again, Greentown Labs made the announcement last year to have their first ever expansion facility located in Houston, Texas. The CEO of Greentown Labs, Emily Reichert, did a nationwide search. They looked at all different types of technology hubs around the United States. Ultimately, Greentown decided Houston is the best location for Greentown to scale their operations, to work with new startups and entrepreneurs and investors. But one of the critical reasons was they wanted access to energy talent in the energy industry to scale new technologies. In fact, Greentown Labs, they've already opened it's a 40,000 square foot facility in the Innovation District across the street from the Rice Ion Smart Cities Incubator. But this area of the city in the Midtown neighborhood is really becoming the epicenter for new energy tech innovation and startups. And not only do we have over 50 startup companies located at Greentown Labs, we also have across the street at the Ion, we have the Chevron Technology Ventures, Microsoft, and other startups and energy companies have located their R&D offices there. So startups at Greentown are directly collaborating with energy majors and tech companies on scaling new technologies. You can see from this slide here some of the founding partners that helped make it possible for Greentown to expand to Houston. Pretty much the who's who of the energy sector are involved in Greentown Labs. All of these companies are very interested to see these new technologies come to a commercialization status. They also want early access to these technologies and ideas. So this has been something that has been highly collaborative with the incumbent energy sector focused on developing new energy technologies. So we're very excited about Greentown Labs. And if we move on to the next slide, I think you'll get a chance to see, these are just some of the companies that are currently at Greentown Houston. I can refer you to their website for a fuller list. And then the next slide. is just some kind of renderings, but essentially this is exactly what it looks like. But you can see that they took over an old building on the Rice Innovation District campus. They repurposed it for this incubator accelerator space. It really is an impressive facility. So if any of you are planning to be in Houston for OTC, please let us know and we'll be happy to organize a tour for you. Then move on to the next slide. And I mentioned the climate action plan, but essentially it's got 4 major goals, categories of goals around transportation, converting municipal fleet vehicles to electric vehicles. It also is focused on creating a new pipeline of energy tech startups, which we've made a lot of progress on with Greentown Labs and Halliburton Labs. We also are looking to make buildings more energy efficient by leveraging new types of financing options to finance upgrades of energy efficiency equipment within buildings. We also have a whole program focused on materials management and circular economy, diverting more landfill waste into usable energy resources. So the climate action plan, again, is a very aggressive plan, and it's really what Houston is leading with to fight climate change. So we're very excited about the climate action plan. And I believe this is my last slide coming up. One other program I wanted to highlight is we are also taking a leadership role on nature-based solutions to capture and store carbon long-term. So the Rice University Baker Institute launched the B Carbon program, which is a soil carbon storage and carbon credit trading platform. Essentially what B Carbon is doing is they're working with landowners all across the United States, farmers, ranchers, forestry lands, wetlands, et cetera, that have the ability to store large volumes of CO2 for long periods of time using natural plants and vegetation. And there's a whole process that B Carbon has developed to qualify lands for soil carbon credits. And this program has gained so much traction that recently ExxonMobil has invested about $1.5 million into the program to purchase up to 100,000 soil carbon credits. Other energy majors and carbon emitting entities are also looking at soil carbon credits as an opportunity to offset carbon. So this is a great program that we're very excited about, again, gaining a lot of traction, and it's based in Houston, Texas. And I believe that was my last slide. And I'll be happy to answer questions later in the program. Turn it back to you, Jeffrey.
Thank you very much, Jose. That was very informative, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of follow-up questions, not only now, but in the future from the people on this event. So moving along to keep us on time, I'd like to introduce Moji Karimi. And Moji is a carbon negative entrepreneur and a technology futurist. His mission is to create a sustainable future with humans, where humans have applied technology to balance the rate of climate change. A future where humans live in harmony with nature. As an operator, he has a track record of taking a range of multidisciplinary ideas to market. The fruits of this experience became Semvita Factory, a company that Moji started together with his sister, Tara. In his role, Moji serves a team of passionate scientists and engineers on a mission to reimagine the heavy industries for a net zero economy. This is done by genetic engineering of microbes that enable carbon negative solutions across oil and gas, chemical, and mining industries. Fascinating stuff. Moji, we want to hear all about it. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the invite. And I wanted to also thank Jose, both for inviting us and also for that great introduction, kind of, laying the foundation for why this makes sense to do in Houston in terms of energy transition. And, specifically, I'm really excited to be here because I think there is a lot of commonalities with Aberdeen and Houston. I have a lot of friends and colleagues from my times at Weatherford who work based in our Aberdeen office. And, as both our cities go through energy transition, there is a lot of legacy with oil and gas. And what I'm passionate about is how could we repurpose the infrastructure that we already have in this new direction. Of course, there is a lot of, diversification in solar and wind, and that's all great. But there is a lot of opportunities also for utilizing the infrastructure that we already have, but applying creative ideas that enables this net zero economy that we're all striving towards. So today I'll share two of those with you that we're working on at Cemvita. The overall vision that we have is, reimagining or repurposing heavy industries, specifically oil and gas and mining, for the net zero economy. The way that we do that is through a set of microbial solutions for sustainable extraction of natural resources, whether if it's hydrocarbons or minerals and energy transition metals, for sustainable production of chemicals and fuels through biomanufacturing, which I'll talk about. And then finally, for sustainable renewal of any waste that's created within that extraction and production process, and recycling that back into other value add chemicals, fuels to be used. So therefore closing the carbon loop whenever possible. All of that feeds three specific verticals within Cemvita as a platform company. The first one is carbon negative biomanufacturing. More specifically, the idea of using CO2 as a feedstock for biomanufacturing of chemicals and fuels. The flagship project that we have there is the bioethylene project with Oxy, which I'll talk about. The second vertical, which is my favorite, is what we're calling subsurface biomanufacturing. The idea to build underground chemical plants and basically turning old oil and gas reservoirs into natural subsurface bioreactors for reactions of interest. One of those reactions, which is our flagship project for this vertical, is to produce biohydrogen using unrecovered oil. So that's what we're calling gold hydrogen. I'll talk more about that. And just kind of to, for the sake of completeness, we won't cover this today, but the third vertical that we have is for biomining. This is the idea to use microbes in the mining industry for better extraction of energy transition metals like copper in processes like bioleaching. And we're also developing new biological methods for better extraction of lithium, for battery metals. So let's jump in. Before going into all the applications, I wanted just to take a moment because I realized, when we talk about microbes in synthetic biology, it could be a bit new. However, we're all familiar with microbes, E. coli, yeast that we use in breweries. What microbes do, basically, they eat sugar and they produce alcohol in some case, but it could be other, products too. What synthetic biology allows us to do with methods like CRISPR is to actually define what do we want the input to be for the microbe and what do we want the output to be. For example, you can now re-engineer a microbe to eat CO2 instead of sugar, for example, and to produce, for example, bioethylene or like acetic acid instead of just ethanol, for example. So that's the synthetic biology kind of overall application. It's a very growing industry. It's touching on many other industries already. The way it started off was in the pharmaceutics. There used to be a time where we harvest insulin from pancreas of pigs and dogs, and then we took the gene for production of insulin and engineered it into E. coli, and now we make it in lab. So that's been happening in pharmaceutical industry where they don't really do chemical reactions anymore. It's all biochemical. And then more recent examples is, if any of you have tried this plant-based meats, Beyond Meat or Impossible, the way that that's made is basically they took the gene for heme, which is hemoglobin, the red thing that makes the meat kind of taste and smell and look like meat, from soy plants, engineered it into yeast, and then you put that in big fermenters and produce, the heme, and then you mix it with a bunch of plant proteins, and there you have it, something that you could eat and you won't be able to tell the difference. What Cemvita is doing is bringing all this advanced technology into the oil and gas industry and into the mining industry, and finding where is it that, the low-hanging fruit applications that we could start with. The inherent benefit of synthetic biology is that these reactions happen under ambient pressure and temperature. So when you think about Scope 1 emissions, it's really could lower those emissions. And if you could use CO2 as a feedstock, you could actually build carbon negative pathways. So essentially, we're turning these microbes into a small, advanced, manufacturing plants or chemical plants for reactions of interest. So the key project here, the first case study, is the bioethylene project that we're doing with Oxy. in this case, our scientist, actually Tara, my co-founder, who's also my sister, basically took the gene for ethylene production, from bananas, because turns out bananas, when they ripen, they make ethylene. And this is a known fact. Like even in produce section of grocery stores, they inject ethylene, they monitor that as a measure of what color they want the banana to be before they put it out on the shelf. So that means there is a natural way that this is being done. We took that gene, we engineered it into a microbe that now makes bioethylene from CO2. And we're going to scale up that process in the next few years to come. This is going to be a major, innovation in the ethylene industry as the biggest organic molecule in the world that goes into all polymers and plastics. And it really allows us to decarbonize polymers and plastics on one hand, but also provide a new way and cheaper way of producing ethylene than having to be just using ethane or other fossil fuels, or just using sugar, as it's done in Brazil, because there's limitations with how much access to sugar we could have. This project, when it's scaled, just to give you a sense of that, would utilize 1.7 million tons of CO2 per year from a cogen power plant to produce 1 billion pounds of bioethylene per year. Our target in terms of techno-economic assessment is to get to cost parity with ethane-based ethylene, because we're eliminating the need for ethane in the first place and lowering the energy intake of the reaction. And in the US, we also have 45Q, which allows for additional tax credits for projects like this where CO2 is being utilized. So the second example is the gold hydrogen. As I mentioned, we're defining gold hydrogen as hydrogen that's produced by microbes biologically and in the subsurface. So prior to Sambita, I was at a startup where we commercialized DNA sequencing in oil and gas, looking at DNA of microbes within the subsurface. And that's when I realized the thriving environment that is in the subsurface with microbes. And in oil and gas, we've known of that, but mostly when we had to know about the bad microbes that produce H2S and cause corrosion. That's why we have all these biocides that we pump. But turns out there's also good microbes in the subsurface that we could now leverage for reactions of interest for us. So this is an example of that. The way this will work is basically we take samples from a reservoir, we understand, the microbial characterization of that and the specific microbes that we're interested in for fermentation of hydrocarbons. We inject our secret cocktail of nutrients, inhibitors, if needed, additional microbes, to then leverage the reservoir as this natural bioreactor for production of gold hydrogen. And then we produce that on surface where we use existing technology for hydrogen processing and additional carbon capture and storage that may be needed. So this is a novel way of making hydrogen, and the cost estimation that we have for this is actually less than $1 per kg, which is significantly less than, say, when you think about green hydrogen. And the reason I like it is because oil and gas companies are now investing in green hydrogen, where they really don't have the expertise in electrolyzers. So there's going to be a big learning curve. Whereas here, you still need drilling engineers, petroleum engineers, petrophysicists, all the existing skill sets that we already have in the industry. As you can imagine, this won't be possible without a very kind of a multidisciplinary team that we've put together, coming from all disciplines and backgrounds: oil and gas, mining, microbiology. We're really grateful and leveraged the Texas Medical Center, which is the biggest medical center in the world, for giving us some of that expertise, a lot of transferable knowledge there, coming together with our experts with prior experience in oil and gas, both upstream and downstream. And since we launched in 2017, again, we have really relied on partnerships, especially working with CVC companies. Oxy Low Carbon Venture is an investor, so is BHP, Sumitomo, Mitsubishi, and others. And we really look forward to, from here on, expand these relationships, both with companies, with different regions, where cities and countries have these visions for decarbonizing their economy, but at the same time creating new revenue streams. So that dual challenge that Jose was talking about, and we'll have to play a big part in that. With that said, I think I'm about at the end of my time, so I'll stop here. My email was in the first slide, moji@samitafactory.com. I know we have kind of a program that we're running here, but happy to answer any questions and connect with you all through LinkedIn as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Moji, and maybe there'll be some. I'm sure there'll be some questions for you at the end of the program. So we hope that you stay on for that. So moving right along, it's my pleasure to introduce Andy Grieve, a man that needs a little introduction, certainly here in Aberdeen. But since it's written down here, I have to do it anyway. So I'm not going to get into Andy's personal story with Houston, because I'm sure he's going to cover that in his presentation. But Andy first came to Houston with his company Hamco, and it still remains a small independent firm with offices in the UK, Singapore, and Brazil. But today he's going to talk to us about his other company, G-Tech Innovation Center, a unique co-working industrial and office space with flexible, low-risk terms for businesses at any stage in their life cycle for startup to downsizing. And I can personally attest to this. I visited Andy's site when it was in Katy. I visited it now in Brookshire. It's a great location for companies to start their Houston operation in there. And I send him interested companies when I can. So this is also a company that I myself can personally attest to. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Andy. The floor is yours.
Thank you. A bit of short video first, which I'll refer to later on in the presentation.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Darren Hill, here in one of the great centres of foreign direct investment, London, England. Today we're exploring the trend in foreign direct investment, or FDI, and reshoring in the US. Prominent economists are now rethinking the move toward globalization. In an October 2019 article in Foreign Policy magazine, Nobel Prize-winning economist Paul Krugman and other mainstream trade experts are now admitting that they were wrong about globalization. It hurt American workers far more than they thought it would. And now recent impacts from the pandemic have further exposed weaknesses in the global supply chain and reinforced the need to localize operations. This is opening new doors for communities as companies rethink their logistics. According to the World Bank, the US is one of the easiest places to do business. One of the US rising stars is Waller County, Texas, a part of the dynamic Houston region. When considering reshoring operations or...
Oh, sorry. I don't know what happened there. Sorry, I just moved the mouse and it jumped. I'll try and get back to there. I'll go from here.
Pandemic have further exposed weaknesses in the global supply chain and reinforced the need to localize operations. This is opening new doors for communities as companies rethink their logistics. According to the World Bank, the US is one of the easiest places to do business. One of the US rising stars is Waller County, Texas, a part of the dynamic Houston region. When considering reshoring operations or investing within the US, companies have been drawn to the Houston region for decades. As part of the diverse Houston area, Waller County represents a new shore for investment opportunities.
The Greater Houston region is a leader in attracting foreign direct investment in manufacturing and logistics to Texas. As the fourth largest city in the country, as well as one of the most diverse, we have long embraced a strategic approach to both investment and regional partnerships. Waller County is one of those critical regional partners. With a great history of attracting leading European companies, they are blazing a new path for reshoring and FDI in the Houston region.
Sorry about that, Andy. I didn't click it. Sometimes my mouse has a mind of its own. Hopefully we've got it all there.
No problem. I'm gonna try and take over the screen now. Are you seeing that? See that now, Stacey?
I'll need to click the green share screen button first, and then it should come up. On the Zoom, there's a button, a green one, that says share screen. Share screen.
No, I thought I did that. Share screen. I'm sorry about this. We had it.
There we go. That's it coming up now. Perfect.
Okay then. So, I'm sorry. I need my. I need to get back to my slide presentation here. This is right. Okay, so we're there. Right. Okay. Well, I think we're there now. And I'd just like to start by saying, hasn't it our Brett done off a wheel keeping this going over the last 10 years? I remember being at the first event 10 years ago and spent many good events over there over the years. And just recap where we are, and it's good to see so many, and I'm grateful to be here, though be it in Texas and not there in Aberdeen, just couldn't make it this year. So welcome to Texas. Everything is bigger here in Texas, but they still could never handle a tough Aberdeen winter. I hear you're having some great weather over there. We've had some really bad storms here over the last couple of days. But the last year we had a particularly bad 2 weeks in February, where it was shut down, a little bit of snow on the ground with mass grid failures, mass utilities failures, no water, and it was quite a learning experience, and destroyed one of my pride and joys, my palm tree here, even though I was told to wrap the trunk by these so-called cold weather experts in Houston. I started my career in Aberdeen in the North Sea as an engineering graduate trainee with the Southeastern Drilling Company, which you may know as SEDCO. I then went on to work with several other drilling contractors, but came to Houston 17 years ago, planning to stay for 9 to 12 months to do a business deal to merge my business with another. The merger was a complete disaster, but we decided to stay independent, and we finally got our citizenship 6 years ago. Our core business remains Hamco, but we started GTEC Innovation Centre back in 2014. You've got to realise that Texas is 3 times the size of the United Kingdom as far as land mass is concerned. Comparing Aberdeenshire and Houston, you'll see on the side here, they're all to scale, but this State Highway 99 is the new ring road around Houston, and it's 180 miles long. So you have to kind of just be familiar with the scale of Houston when you're coming here to do business. Now, as an Aberdeenshire patriot, though, I still like to point out the fact, however, that Aberdeenshire still has a bigger population. And I want to give some orientation to the area. Everyone is familiar coming into Houston, you come into the airport. A lot of people just come here to go to OTC. But of course, out west is where the energy corridor is. Then we've got Katy, and we're now out in Brookshire. But this main artery, the Interstate 10, 900 miles to Florida that direction, 1,500 miles to California in the other direction. Down the south here, we're near NASA. Pre-COVID, we started a project in Pearland, but we then parked that to the side in favour for further development in Brookshire. So this is a view of the energy corridor, to give you an idea. A view of the energy corridor along I-10. Just like Chuck said yesterday, world's widest freeway, 26 lanes. Having to pass my driving test again, as you all do if you're staying here more than a month. It was the most frightening thing I think I've ever done. However, it's even more interesting to realise that kids get their licenses at 15 and start driving at 16. So it's not all these Texas trucks are using new auto driving technology, just that you can't see the driver. So Hamco, this is the same slide I created back in 2015 when the business turned to the proverbials. But the company was started in 1988. We're engineering and consultants, crown to keel on drilling rigs. That means top to bottom. Main areas of activities, UK, US, Singapore, and Brazil. But we have tried to get into this transition. Now, to me, transition means going from oil to no oil, and that's a long way off. And it's very hard for a small business like me to break this wind. For example, we're seeing all these blades being buried, and I wondered if that's something we could do something about. But I did hear that someone's now got a technique to recycle wind turbine blades involving some polymers that can be reused. And of course, those polymers are oil. So I'm more of the tune. I think of this as an energy mix. So we at GTEC are trying to work with companies from all levels of the energy mix. And in fact, we support the new charity of Save Our Drill Bit. So I've got my little friend here, and I was particularly minded at Burns, the old poem To a Mouse. So the wee sleeked, coorin, timorous beastie, oh, with barracks in thy breastie. Now needn't start the boss a hasty with bricker and brattle, for I would be loath to run and chase thee with political twaddle. Now maybe Burns didn't write the last line, but we started our journey about 10 years ago with the help of Greater Houston Partnership and the Katy Economic Development Council. We bought a piece of land, determined to build a modest facility for Hamco. Because it was a foreigner, it was particularly challenging and interesting trying to raise finance to do so. Few companies that we were dealing with in Houston, in UK, said that should we be able to build a facility, they would like to share a corner of it. And that was the start of the GTEC co-working industrial space. So we built 48,000 square feet in Katy there. And the whole idea was to provide a place to enable businesses to grow quickly in the world's energy capital, learning from the benefits of my experiences. As you said, for non-US entrepreneurs, and some of our gone over yesterday, everything from the immigration to the insurance, to just simply getting credit. It all takes time and management effort. But rest assured, as a foreigner, you can go into any or a loan, providing you're over 90 and you're accompanied by both adults. Going from an office, which is easy to get, to an industrial is a quantum leap. Finding a place and qualifying for a lease, knowing how much you're going to need for a start, but managing the facilities, your insurances, your certification, even organising your electricity and water, but OSHA compliance, that's the Occupational Safety and Health Administration regulations, is different than UK HSE, but just maintaining and repairing it. This all takes extreme amount of valuable management time and effort that should be spent directly on your business. 3 years ago, one customer expanded and encouraged us to sell him our building. So we moved along the road to the small city of Brookshire. Out west here, I'm going to show you an aerial of this area here from Katy to Brookshire. This corridor, it's an old photograph, but over the last few years, this is getting built out with huge distribution structures and warehouses, 1 to 2 million square feet. Now that means 45 acres under one roof. In fact, a few miles north of this, there is one of the largest in the US and possibly the world, is a 97-acre building that's run by Dicon. Ours is just a small hen house or a garden shed in comparison. It was an old building. We refurbished it. It's about 40 years old. It's got a lot of history on its own, which I won't go into. But it's from there we supply and provide a range of facilities, from heavy duty workshop, clean workshop, all the craneage, the forklifts, training rooms, offices, storage space, just to try to cater for any company's needs for moving into the area quickly. It's had a wide range of uses over the last 3 years, from a birthday party in the top left to surgical mask manufacture, in the big workshop where we're storing millions of industrial masks. In the bottom right here is an Aberdeen company, STR, who moved in pre-pandemic for about 3 months, and they were stayed with us for over a year. They grew their business substantially by just adding to space as they went along. It was sad to see them go, but good to see them moving on, because that's what we're for. That short-term landing pad to allow companies to get moving and get out on their own. So we're offering our experience and our network, a fast but soft landing into the area, flexible accommodation, low risk, low financial risk. And by that, I'm saying our agreements have a 3-month termination, for example. So you're not tying yourself into a long-term lease for something you don't know that's too little, or whether it could be too big. We've got that flexibility. And even within our agreements, people can expand or contract according to what they need. We provide operational support, even right down to, okay, where do I buy a hammer? And compliance support. And we have our GTEC Academy, where we're just about to start some industrial safety training that can be provided to each of our customers in recognition of their responsibility as employers under the Act here. We're offering this entrepreneurial ecosystem on an industrial level. The guys have spoken a tremendous deal about how significantly the whole entrepreneurial system has grown in Houston in the last few years. But effectively, as long as we provide a place to swap numbers, cross-sell, discover new customers and help each other, and that's how it's working. Our customers at the moment up there, Allrig from Aberdeen, inspection company, and Tares from Argentina, an automation company, armor fitter, upfitters, bulletproofing and body vests. Arta's a German stainless steel company. They've been looking for years. They've been operating for here. They needed 500 square feet, but they needed a 10-ton overhead crane. They've got that with us. Clover Tool was a local company, decided to downsize and move in with us. Dynamics is an Aberdeen company that we're coming on board with us next month. Embark, a very interesting company from California that I'll tell you a little bit more about next. Hamilton, a Spanish shipping agent. OTS is a Norwegian waste control company. RVS is a local fleet management. Paradigm from Aberdeen and now Dutch, part of the Dutch group. SSE from Brazil. I mentioned STR. S2S, Canadian company specializing in corrosion control, and a technology company in water, doing water filtration. This company in Embark Trucks, they chose our site because of our location to launch their operations from California to Texas. These are full auto-driving trucks. They're going to have several hundred of these operating around the US. They've 4 in with us now. These trucks are covered in radars and sensors, accurate to ½ an inch, and it's a very interesting story. We were in for a month, and now they're going to probably stay another 3 or 4 months. Right across the alley from them, on the other side of the building, we've got Aberdeen Paradigm. So they're all working, co-working space. But location, as I say. We're in a good spot. This is I-10 here. It's continually being upgraded, so it's very accessible out in Brookshire. So our expansion, we are looking at building some other units on our spare land here. They will comprise a series of hybrid 2-story blocks, and we'll be using innovative building methods, a new sustainable construction system to provide modern flexible units, all about 1,000 square feet. They can either be leased or leased to purchase, and those tenants will have full access to the existing industrial space, so they don't need to commit long-term to the industrial aspect. So we'll have communal facilities and amenities. We'll have an environmental focus. We'll have a few solar panels, and we're using that very sustainable construction method. But we'll do event hosting and just try to build on our business community spirit. But we've also got access to some offsite space. This is a facility nearby that's 400,000 square feet that we have an agreement with the owner to move there should we not be able to accommodate some of the larger clients. So adjusting to Texas, I could spend a whole day on all our experiences with each of these. I mean, yesterday they've mentioned credit, the immigration and the like. So there's a bunch there that I'd be happy to discuss with any of you. But why locate here? Business friendly, family friendly, and it's got great winters. The worst things about doing business in the US. First is tax. And as Gus said yesterday, choosing your entity, choose your legal entity wisely. There's so many to choose from. Number two is tax. Of course, we said that you've got federal taxes to look at, state taxes, county, city, school district, utility district. And even if you're trading internationally, this really interesting one called GILTI tax, Global Intangible Low Taxed Income. Frank is following me here, and he's the expert on all of this. The third problem is tax. Bear in mind that if you own property here, you've got to pay property taxes, not only on a building, but also on the assets that you own here, from your fixtures and fittings to your vehicles and likes. There's a state sales tax, a city sales tax, and these vary from location to location. The employment and unemployment taxes are a lot more complicated. And we use a PEO, which is a professional employer organization for our employment. They're not just a payroll administration company. They actually take care of all your benefits and everything else, just like a full HR department. And I mentioned the Texas franchise tax. I know that Jeffrey says we have no state tax in Texas, but they've got this really cute one called franchise tax. It's a really complicated thing to work out, and it's not a huge amount, but it is just something you have to keep in mind. Number four is tax, but that's all from the personal side. Beware that when you're over, you may fall under personal tax jurisdiction. Keep that in mind. If you stay here long term, everything from your estate inheritance, getting your will sorted out, your home property insurance, bear in mind that you're paying almost 3% of the value of your house every year in property taxes, depending on the location you are. So it's a bit like council tax, but a lot more. And consider your pensions, it's called 401k here. So number five was tax. Don't underestimate the complexity of tax. But of course, the other thing that you've got here that you've got to get used to are the beasties. I've got personal experience with almost all of these. And again, that's a story for each. But of course, the worst is there's no batteries. This here is my last packet from my last trip back to the UK. We're now only taking it out on special occasions and birthdays. It was my birthday last week, so we took one, divided it between the four of us, put the rest in the deep freeze for the next birthday. Waller County, we showed that slide for a start, and this is where we are. It was a great honour to be invited to attend and participate in their annual planning meeting this year. I know that the Executive Director, Vince Yoakum, is online at the moment. Welcome. We were featured in their presentation and with a view to participating in their foreign direct investment and reshoring initiatives. Now, Waller County also has several opportunity zones. Now, this really only affects US capital gains, but think ahead. These opportunity zones are recognized as one of the best bipartisan tax regulations in US history, passed by the Trump administration. And it's relevant to not only property, it's relevant to business. So again, think ahead and keep these in mind. So our mission is to offer businesses a fully serviced industrial facility without leases or capital investment, but with complete flexibility to expand or contract, to enable a fast-track, low-risk business expansion. And one more thing, the Texas Medical Center has been mentioned several times. And it really is a fantastic place to be ill in Houston. I've had personal experiences with major back surgery and cancer treatment here, and I cannot fault it. And the choice is exceptional. So you see the major center there in Houston, but even when you look at local shopping centers, this is a good example nearby my old house. You've got a Mexican restaurant, next door to an MRI unit, next door to a spine surgery, next door to a pizza place, next door to a dialysis unit. And it's not far from the truth that you can get a colonoscopy faster than a table here. Now here's to the next 10 years, Brett. So Slangevar and Barney, you better pull it off in May. And Jeffrey, keep your nose clean. Thank you very much.
Oh,
That's
that's
my
great.
beautiful
Let's take that picture.
Yes,
Oh, my goodness.
thank you for that, Andy.
Oh, can we go back? Oh, no.
Yeah, colorful as well as informative. And if I've ever heard of a great setup for Frank Landreneau, I haven't heard it yet. So we're going to move right into the next speaker. Frank Landreneau from PKF, Texas, is somebody that I've come to Aberdeen on several occasions as part of the Gateway. So he's a well-known person here. He's a CPA and International Tax Director and Chief Financial Officer of PKF, Texas. And he has extensive experience providing domestic and international tax consulting and compliance services to private and public entities based in the US and throughout the world. His experience includes assisting clients operating in various foreign tax jurisdictions, thank you, with a variety of international tax issues, such as transfer pricing, global tax minimization, and international organizational structuring. He also consults companies with numerous complex tax issues related to acquiring and diversifying of subsidiaries to realign their businesses. And also noted here, again, he has been a frequent speaker at the Aberdeen Houston Gateway. And undoubtedly, he is also Andy Greaves' tax advisor. Okay. So, Frank, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, everyone, and welcome to the 10th Annual Gateway. We've been a proud sponsor for many years and enjoyed the hospitality of the folks in Aberdeen. And to celebrate that, I'm wearing my Scottish tie to represent the connection between Houston and Scotland. So as Andy kind of kicked it off, tax matters, obviously in the US and globally is a rather complicated topic. So it's going to be very hard to have a comprehensive overview of everything in 10 minutes. But what I've tried to do is isolate some of the 5 key tax matters that companies need to consider when internationalizing into the US. And our discussion, unfortunately, is going to be limited to US federal income tax and how it interfaces with the international tax system. Next slide, please. And so to kick us off, Andy kind of mentioned this initially, entity structuring, selecting the type of entity. We have many different types of entities here in the US. One common one is the limited liability company. If you work with a variety of practitioners, they may encourage you to get into one of these. That's not always the best choice. I think you have to work with someone who has an appreciation for cross-border issues as well as incentives, because the tax rules often and the application of those rules can differ by entity. So for example, if you are having a joint venture, let's say in the US, and the income is being taxed not only in the US, but also in the home jurisdiction, you'll want a structure that ensures that any US tax that is incurred is creditable back in the home country. In this particular case, it would be the UK. And one of that structure is, you know, a U.S. entity or some other more complex structure. It really depends on the owner group. A lot of times, the standard straightforward scenario is you have a corporate UK entity that owns the US venture. But a lot of times I have a client right now that has a multitude of foreign investors as well as US investors. And so the entity choice can become more complex. To complex it even further, the United States has gift and estate tax issues. And so if you're a foreign person, particularly a foreign individual, you will not want to subject your assets to U.S. estate and gift tax, or what's called inheritance tax issues, and may want to use a foreign blocker entity in between your ownership back in the UK and the ultimate U.S. operations. So those are the considerations to use. Also, treaty benefits vary. If you are an individual investor, the withholding rates tend to be a bit higher, like something like 10 to 15%, where if you use a corporate entity, the withholding rates, particularly for dividends, could be a 0% rate, particularly in the case of the UK, where there's a very favorable US UK treaty. And then there's an incentive for exports. So if you're looking to do business in the US, particularly if you're going to source product in the US and export abroad, let's say Latin America, and use the US as a home base of operations, there's a tax incentive that assists you to get a much lower rate. Right now, the US corporate rate is 21%, the UK rate is 19%. This incentive allows you to get as little as a 13.25% on exported profits if you use this type of structure. Next slide, please. And this is probably one of the most important slides, if not the most important slide, because usually what happens when clients come into the US, they want to get started right away. You know, very excited. There's a lot of opportunity, as Andy mentioned. And so they usually don't give a lot of thought to financing or what their financing needs are, and provide for short-term, or at least what appears to be what the intention is, short-term intercompany advances, you know, to finance and fund operations in the US. And a lot of times these advances are not documented. They're more than short-term. They tend to be over a year in duration before they're paid back. And so questions about whether these advances are equity or debt can come into play, which can cause some tax issues. Assuming it is debt, we have thin capitalization rules like many other countries around the world, which limit the deductibility of interest expense. And there's been more expansive interest disallowance rules under tax reform since 2017. Well, one of the things that can be used is and clients tell me, is that, well, we don't have the funds to pay it back. And that's why these intercompany advances stay outstanding longer than intended. Well, the U.S. does recognize the ability for the Home Office to fund the loan for it to be paid back. So it kind of creates a circular cash flow. And as long as arm's length transfer pricing is used to determine interest rates for the amounts that are being borrowed, this type of structure this investment structure will be respected. And be mindful of base erosion strategies. One strategy would be to have deductible payments of things like interest, royalties for the use of intellectual property. And that can be beneficial if the home country rate is lower than the US rate, as is in the case of the United Kingdom, which currently has a 19% corporate tax rate. Of course, there are foreign currency issues, and you do have to be mindful of perhaps unintended gains and losses on financial instruments. Usually my clients will have debt that's issued in US dollar denominations to avoid a lot of foreign currency recognition in the US. And of course, documentation of these arrangements are very, very important to make sure that the instrument is respected as intended as either debt or equity. Next slide, please. One of the things that is very important, it's often overlooked, is transfer pricing, mainly because when businesses start in the U.S., they may not have very much in terms of net revenue, particularly if they are a manufacturing company. I've worked with inbound companies that do manufacturing, and it may take a few years to generate any kind of profit. So transfer pricing tends to take a back burner in terms of planning. Other clients or distribution centers where their productivity and profitability is something that occurs within the first 12 months, or certainly within the first 24 months. And so, so those companies become profitable much earlier. And in the case of service providers, intercompany services, companies that come into the U.S. that provide, let's say, oil field services, those companies tend to be profitable right away. One of the things to keep in mind is that transfer price is not just a documentation exercise to make sure you stay out of trouble with the Internal Revenue Service or the Inland Revenue in the UK, but it also can help you manage your tax, overall tax rate, effective tax rate, or ETR, in cash flow. So, for example, different business models. If you're a distributor distributing products in the U.S., oftentimes it's very advantageous to be a limited risk distributor and earn minimal profits, particularly if the tax rate in the home country is much lower. And almost any kind of business that you have, there's always some type of home office support. So oftentimes if a UK company starts business in the US, the UK company will provide IT, legal, accounting, some type of back office support, which they should charge some kind of a markup for their services. And of course, you want the profits to be reasonable and in line with the types of risk assets and capital that are being deployed in the US. This is very important because you don't want to run into a situation where you have a transfer pricing adjustment in either jurisdiction, the home country or the US jurisdiction, where you have a double taxation. Because don't automatically think there will be an automatic adjustment in the offsetting country to offset any transfer pricing adjustments in one country. You could end up with profits being taxed in both countries because of adjustments that are not respected in another country. Next slide.
1 minute left, Frank.
Okay. And probably what's very, very important is right now workforce. There's a talent war. There's supply chain management, but that supply chain also includes human capital. And so again, one of the things, we don't have a nationalized healthcare system, so attention to the kind of benefits is important. A company wants to make sure that it does not send people here that are not employees of the U.S. company, because you could be triggering taxation risk for the home country entity in the U.S. if you don't have employees in the U.S. country. Of course, you need to pay attention to your legal employed contractor arrangements. Very important, especially since the U.S. tends to be a litigious society. And of course, establishing substance, making sure that you have activities and human capital to carry out those activities that are in line with your talent and transfer pricing strategy. Next slide, please. And of course, finally, although something that's not necessarily looked at from the very beginning, eventually the home country will want to repatriate profits. There will come a time, and some of this can come across earlier than others, particularly if you're a distribution company that is generating profits very, very early on. You will want to bring back profits back to the home country to either pay down debt or pay shareholders back in the home country. So use of repatriation strategies, for example, charging for intercompany services, charging for the use of intellectual property here in the U.S. are very important. Be mindful with respect to withholding taxes, and of course, align those transfer pricing strategies with the business model. For example, you don't want to have a distributor that is earning 20% profit when it has very limited risks and activities. So all this is kind of intertwined with each other to have an overall international tax strategy for your company. And while this is a very high level discussion, and it really covers one segment of taxes, this is really a primer for companies that are looking to do business in the U.S. And with that, I appreciate your time and attention, and look forward to being of service to any of you looking to come to the U.S. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank. We're going to move on now to our next speaker, Peter Adam from Add Energy, where he's presently the Executive Vice President for Asset and Integrity Management Division, overseeing Aberdeen, Houston, Calgary, and Muscat offices. Peter has over 20 years of experience in the international energy sector, 3 years in manufacturing, 2 years in defense, specializing in the fields of business performance improvement, operational excellence, digital solutions, reliability, maintenance, and integrity for companies globally. Well, I think that's a fascinating introduction, and we're going to hear all about it now from Peter. So Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the great introduction there. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from the Middle East. It's my pleasure to speak to you today about transition and our experience with Houston as a kind of combined message, I guess. So I represent Add Energy, as mentioned, and we are proud winners of the Queen's Award for International Trade. Next slide, please. So I think the transition and change itself is inevitable. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what that looks like in our view. Next slide, please. So the capabilities of Add Energy, we had to look at what was interchangeable as we move towards changing the oil and gas supply chain and look at how we transition energy and work in the renewable space as well. So we work in asset integrity management, and that's quite easy to transfer over. All of our services are kind of transferable skills within that space, whether it be a waste to heat and power plant, an oil and gas rig, a drilling rig, solar plant, various different aspects. Same with drilling and well engineering. It can be applied to the CCS space and also in geothermal, where we've been working as well. Safety and risk is something across many, many different industries. Training and advisory services and software we've made agnostic to industry now so that we can work in any sector. So really trying as a business to make sure we're ready for the future. Next slide, please. So why am I here? Well, because we have an office in Aberdeen and we have an office in Houston. So I guess that qualifies me to be part of this discussion today. Next slide, please. So post Macondo, we set up our Houston office. Our well integrity management team were critical to the well kill for Macondo. So that was really the reason for setup. And since then, the business has really transferred over the years into being more asset integrity management and asset management focused, with our vice president in Houston, Susan Stein, running the business there for North America, and seeing significant growth over the last 3 years in particular, and the opening of our Canada branch as well, which we were prospecting the market for a couple of years and then finally opened our branch just prior to COVID, November 2019. And then we started with renewables projects in 2020. But America and Canada are our highest growth areas in the world at the moment. And we're pleased to see even some of the renewables projects starting up out of the Houston office as well. The legal entity was opened in 2021. So next slide, please. So those of you who are young enough, who I think is the majority of the people in this call, will remember the battle between VHS and Betamax. I'm not sure if you bought which version, but ultimately VHS prevailed, albeit that it was the lower quality version. So if you could click, please. So what will be the winner in the future energy generation mix? Well, hydro is still 60% of the global renewable energy produced. That's the reality. And that's been in existence for quite a long time. So there's a lot of catch up to do. I think we're going to see growth in particular around oil and gas with CCS and blue hydrogen options, and even green hydrogen or grey hydrogen and green hydrogen as well. But these are the options open to us as we look at the energy, and we have to look at what that costs and whether it's realistic as well. And I think we also have to be mindful of the fact that, you know, a high proportion of the people in the world are in developing countries where having an electric car is just not viable at this stage or in the near or medium future even. If you could click again. So I don't think the challenge is so much about how the energy might be generated. I think we're on various different paths there as countries, and also depending on our state as a developed or developing country. But I think the challenge will really be around flexible energy storage and distribution of that. So again, are you going to be the VHS or the Betamax? Are you hydrogen or are you batteries? And I think it's a lot of early adoption at the moment, and I don't think this is clear. And I think more investigation and science needs to go into this. But I was very pleased to see the presentation earlier about golden hydrogen is extremely encouraging, and hopefully that's something that's scalable for the future. But we work with companies in terms of blue hydrogen, for example, battery storage, power generation, decentralized power generation, and peak shaving facilities, which are all part of this mix for the future. Why is this such a challenge? Well, if you click on the next slide. So currently you can see on here that 5 gigawatts of the annual energy storage by country globally are produced. And this was taken from 2020. If you could click again, please. Just to put this in context, globally energy generation was at 26,730 gigawatts. So you can see how tiny a percentage that is currently available for storage. So as we move more into renewables, where if it's not sunny or it's too sunny and you've got lots of energy, how do you store all of that energy in peak shave? And same with solar, wind, or not so much with wave because it's more continual, but you have these challenges. If you could click again. So 150 gigawatts of storage is needed to meet the ARENA's desired target, 40% power generated from renewable sources by 2030. So you can see at the rate we're going now, it's not logarithmic enough to meet that requirement. So hydrogen will definitely be part of the solution, but again, it's making that scalable and at a level where everyone can use it is going to be the challenge. So this isn't about being negative, it's about being realistic and understanding that there's huge growth in these areas. It just gives you an idea of how much growth there needs to be to meet these energy challenges that we all face. Now, the main thing that drives this and behavior is taxes, and there's been a lot of talk about taxes already today. So if you could click on the next slide. So I find it really interesting looking at kind of leading indicator around carbon tax credits, for example, and you look at the increase in the value of carbon tax credits since 2019 in Europe, and also for California, where they're slightly more forward leaning in terms of carbon tax. This is the future. This is where possibly the next most richest person in the world will probably make their money. Carbon offsetting and carbon taxes is going to be a very high growth area and impacted by what we do as all the people in this call around the energy transition and carbon storage, for example. Next slide, please. So I think it's very exciting that we have this opportunity. It's a huge growth industry with all the transferable skills from oil and gas in particular. And you know, what's our bid on this, if you like? It's around the CCS part. We're prolific in CCS and have actually been doing this for more than 10 years. So a long track record in that area. We're also involved in solar and wind projects around the world. We're involved and also in North America itself, albeit that the focus in North America, for example, on microgrids with solar, is in California because of the tax benefits. So you will see a lot of technology in Houston, but where states are employing carbon tax and there's much more maybe political pressure, you're going to see more of the market value, if you like, in deployment, I would say. But the technology really exists, I think, in Houston, and all the knowledge and possibly investment as well coming out of oil and gas and funding this ultimately, which is a reality. We're also involved in hydrogen, more to do with the blue hydrogen side and the Hazer process. And we've been involved for a number of years in waste to heat facilities and biomass as well, which are part of a sustainable cycle if you have the carbon capture as well. Next slide, please.
Okay, 1 minute left, Pete.
Thanks, Stacey. I've only 5 minutes worth of slides left to go. No, I'm only joking. So this is just a case study from one of the solar projects that we've been involved in. So helping them to business model and plan the contracts for 20-year contracts, deploying microgrids for their clients who are manufacturers in the US and California, very well-known brand names who now want to decentralize their energy. The client of ours basically sells the energy exactly as you would from any power company for a 20-year period, and then they install the solar setup, and it may also include some generation, hydrocarbon generation in there for if there's a failure of the system or other issues. Battery storage needs to be in there as well, because this may also be for a hospital or for something kind of complex that's very critical as well. So our role in there, for example, as we've done in oil and gas, is to be able to help with the asset management strategy, life cycle model, the capex and opex costs, so they can be confident that they can deliver the price to the client and make money ultimately through that life cycle, and also help them to look at the reliability performance of the OEMs before building the asset and getting that operational readiness and assurance that they need. So this is going to be a good deal at the end of the day. Next slide, please. So thank you very much for your time. I'm happy to meet you all and hopefully connect through LinkedIn in the future as well. And hopefully that's been of some use for you.
Thank you very much, Peter. It absolutely has been informative. And if we have any questions, we have a question and answer period at the end of the program. So please stay on the call for any questions that may be directed towards you. So moving forward with our next speaker, we have Darren Bragg, who is Global Sales and Business Development Manager at EnerQuip, which is a business that supplies market-leading torque equipment to the oil and gas industry. He has over 17 years in the industry, and it says here has the experience of establishing an international office in Houston as well. So Darren, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Just next slide, please, Stacey. Thank you. So just a brief background as to who EnerQuip are. The company was established in 2015 and is currently privately owned. We design, fabricate, and manufacture bespoke torque equipment for the oil field service industry. Our equipment is used for screwing together, making up or breaking out downhole drilling and completion equipment. So our customers are the service companies, the Weatherfords, Halliburtons, Schlumbergers, etc. of the world, and obviously smaller independents from there. EnerQuip's history, so we can trace our roots right back to a company called AMC Engineering, who was sold to Forum Energy Technologies, a Houston-based headquartered company. And then in 2015, the previous senior managers and owners of AMC decided to start EnerQuip. Today, we have our headquarters here in Aberdeen, as well as an office in Houston. And we are currently in the process of opening a new facility in Abu Dhabi as well. Next slide, please. So this is just a little slide as to what it is that we do. I won't bore too many people on this, but by all means, if anyone wants any information on our product range, they're more than welcome to get in touch. Next slide, please. So yeah, as mentioned, I have previously set up and established an office in Houston. That was when I was working for AMC Engineering. I started the legwork there when I was probably 22 and then relocated there when I was 23. And it was during that transition period that we were then bought by Forum Energy. So I'm quite well versed with the area, although it has obviously changed in the year since. A lot of business and growth has gone into particularly the north of Houston. And I'll go into some experiences and do's and don'ts a little bit further on. And today, continue to visit not just Houston, but around the Gulf region as well. So still a great place for me to visit and continues to be a very important location for EnerQuip. Next slide, please. So why Houston? So for AMC, we had been awarded 3 or 4 global MSA, MPA contracts. And although they didn't stipulate that they had to be, there had to be a Houston office, we found it would be far easier for us to manage those contracts from a Houston location. As an SME that at that time only had a facility in Aberdeen, for us to be taken seriously, support from the UK was no longer sufficient. Our equipment is capital equipment. It's sent to locations around the world, and we will then send people to service, calibrate, maintain, troubleshoot, fault find. Flying people from Aberdeen is not something that we can continue to do forever. And so we had to look at setting up these strategic hubs, and Houston was the first of those hubs. It then allowed us to grow off the back of those MSAs and develop opportunities with smaller local independent companies and get ourselves away from reliance on the blue chip companies. As I'll come to further on though, these smaller companies, it was difficult to open doors with them. So if we're dealing with Schlumberger in Kuwait or Aberdeen or wherever, good news travels and that can open doors internally within that company for us. But a small single location in Houston, that takes a lot of confidence to trust us that we are going to be able to service their equipment just as well as their incumbent that they use down the road. So by being there, we had to say what we do and improve it by actually backing that up with our high levels of service. For EnerQuip, to compete on a level playing field, establishing the Houston office is critical for our exposure. By that, our main competitor at that point was Forum, as well as NOV, who both have quite well-established Houston locations. So if we were going to compete at that level, we had to have a Houston presence as well. Allowed for better dialogue and introduction of new business and to grow relationships. A lot of decision-making, as I'll come to, has returned to Houston throughout the pandemic with downsizing and then closures of facilities around the world. We've seen more and more decision-making being returned to Houston, and having that local presence there has certainly helped us to grow those relationships. For EnerQuip, the group revenue as a percentage directly linked to Houston has grown from approximately 7% to about 31% since 2015. So a significant portion of our revenue is directly attributed to our Houston location. And today, our Houston office employs 3 people, and we have 2 more supported out of Louisiana as well. Next slide, please. So strategic importance. Somebody might correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe originally Tulsa, Oklahoma was the holder of the title of the oil capital of the world. But going back to earlier in the presentations, very much Houston is seen as now the energy capital of the world. So it's symbolic within the oil industry, and being there, as well as our clients having major offices or headquarters in Houston, it allows us just to speak at the table and have dialogue that would otherwise bypass us if we weren't there. As I said, COVID and the downturn in the last 2 years as a result of COVID has meant that companies have downsized in some international regions, and with that, key decision making has moved back to Houston. So being at the table, having those conversations and getting opportunities earlier has allowed us to influence decision making towards our equipment being the preferred choice. But Houston also serves to us as a gateway location to the Western Hemisphere. As recently as 2 weeks ago, we were awarded a contract for a new project in Guyana, which has been directly linked to Houston. The decision maker was made in Houston. The company in question, their headquarters are in Houston, and that has allowed us to capitalize on what is very much seen as a potential new frontier location, such as Guyana. Next slide, please. So what were the challenges of establishing the business? Decision making is returning to Houston, but don't assume that just because you deal with somebody in Aberdeen or anywhere else around the world that you'll be known in Houston. We found that if we're dealing with somebody like Schlumberger, and we've got a great relationship with them in 7 or 8 locations, that doesn't mean that we are known in the corridors of Houston. So the groundwork still needs to be done. It might open a door for you, but it's not a free pass to just be entitled to anything. So you really need to put in the groundwork and understand who your contacts are. Service, I'm sure we've all been to bars and restaurants and had nothing but exemplary service, and it's not a facade. It is a cornerstone of doing business in Houston, and you cannot let your service levels drop. Particularly in our industry, competition is fierce. Just in the Houston area, there's probably 3 or 4 companies who can not only provide equipment that we can, but also provide the aftermarket support as well. And this is a fierce marketplace where people can be undercut for as little as $100 a day could be the difference. So being the incumbent and backing that up with reputable quality service is massively important. There's always someone waiting to take your place. So you have to stay on it and you have to keep those relationships fresh. Establishing the business was considerably easier than as we are finding somewhere like UAE. But again, as Andy at Hamco alluded to earlier, with things like credit, cash flow can very quickly be dried up. Credit takes time to establish. Many contracts, whether it's something for a mobile phone or getting a stationary supplier, whatever it is, will insist on cash in advance. So that is one of the biggest challenges. You know, Andy did a very good job earlier of laying out quite a few of those challenges, but if there was one I was going to point out, it would be credit and cash flow to any business that is looking to establish themselves in Houston. It's not difficult to overcome, but certainly when you're starting off fresh, it is something that can seem daunting and quickly overwhelm you if you're not keeping tabs on it. Next slide, please. Sorry, that's it. So if I don't have any questions, but certainly for us at EnerQuip, Houston is and will continue to be a very strategic operational hub for us.
Thank you very much, Darren, for telling us about the EnerQuip and sharing your experiences in Houston. I'm sure everyone found that very informative. So now we'd like to move on to our last speaker today, and that's Ali Forbes of Motive Spooling and Inspection. And he overlooks all aspects from planning and operations to sales, growing the business across sectors internationally. And he joined Motive in 2016 and was instrumental in launching this new division. And he brings 20 years of experience in the wire rope inspection and lifting industry. And his background is chiefly in the oil and gas, renewables, and subsea sectors, with technical expertise covering an extensive range of disciplines. So, Ali, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good morning and good afternoon to everyone. Firstly, thank you to Brett and Stacey for inviting me along to this Aberdeen Houston Gateway. This is my first one, so I'm been very much impressed with the speakers so far. So congratulations to all the speakers. Very, very informative and very interesting. So with being last, I really do hope I do not let you guys down. But a couple of things. I would also like to thank my business development manager, Andy Derrick, for throwing me very much into the deep end by asking me to come on very last minute and share my experiences with working or trying to create a business over in Houston. Also, very, very interesting listening to Andy Grieve. However, I must express my disappointment to his choice of Rowies. I was very much expecting to see the Byron Bakery Rowies on there, so disappointing, Mr. Greaves, to say the least, but we'll let you off. So yeah, so just a quick introduction. Of course, my name is Ali Forbes, and I'm the managing director of the Motive Spooling Inspection division, which is part of the Motive Offshore group. If you want to go to the next slide, Stacey. Yeah, so our vision is Motive will be the leading energy specialist, always prioritizing in the development of our highly skilled team, trusted to create sustainable multi-sector solutions that are innovative and tailored to our client needs. Next slide, Stacey. So our group is split up into three divisions. So we have the Motive Rentals, the Motive Engineering, and the Motive Spooling Inspection. I will talk very much more about Motive Spooling Inspection in the next couple of slides. But our rentals division is it says what basically is on the slide: flexible umbilical and cable lay packages, lifting and pulling equipment, so your deck winches, etc. Quayside transpooling services, fluid transfer equipment, expert technical support, experienced multidiscipline technicians, and tailor-made packages to suit project requirements. Our engineering division: design and manufacture of winches, spoolers, HPUs, and other deck equipment. Design and build service for bespoke engineering projects. Small and large-scale industrial fabrication and machining capabilities. Vessel services including mobilization, sea fastening and repairs, maintenance, overhaul, and servicing of equipment. I will stress that these two divisions are not currently operating out of Houston or the Gulf of Mexico. They're very much headquartered here in Aberdeenshire, up in sunny Boyndy. Our spool inspection division, though, we specialise in lifting equipment inspections, umbilical flushing and testing, fibre optic testing and jointing services, wire rope management, hose integrity management, non-destructive testing, dropped object surveys, critical load path inspections, and rope access services. And we're very much focused on oil and gas. We're also into renewables and also energy utilities. Next slide, Stacey. Okay, so I just wanted to touch a little bit on my experience with operating out of Houston. In 2018, we launched our service offering over in Houston. And that was on the back of one of our key clients here in Aberdeen, whose corporate office was in Houston. And we were asked to go over and see these, the corporate big guys, I suppose you want to call them, with a view of getting a worldwide frame agreement to try and secure some more work, not only for our UK market, but also for a worldwide market. So when we went over to Houston, I'd only ever been to Houston once, so it was very much a rabbit caught in the headlights a little bit. And Andy touched on the energy corridor, which was, yeah, definitely a seatbelt job itself. But one of our clients was key to our setup over in Houston, and it didn't take us very long to identify that we needed to have a setup in Houston. What wasn't explained to us was the difficulties of setting up a business in Houston, and we were very, very naive. We thought it was going to be plain sailing, etc. But of course, a couple of the speakers have touched on some of the challenges that we were faced when we set up in Houston, and it's very, very much so. Taxes, even personnel, etc., etc. So anyway, in 2018, we launched the business. I was sent over by my directors, and I spent at least 3 months over there trying to get the business set up, etc., banking details and all that kind of good stuff. Good experience, not something I would want to go through again, but it was certainly a lot of experience gain. So next slide, Stacey. So just a little bit about our motive spooling inspection journey. We launched the business in the UK in 2016 with 3 specialists. So that was me, my wife, and one other. In 2017, we had secured £1 million worth of contracts. And then in middle of 2017, we mobilized our first equipment to go to Brazil. Moving on to 2018 was when we launched the spooling inspection division over in Houston, where we took on a local business development manager to try and promote the business, etc. over there. 2019 was probably our biggest and most successful year to date. That was the year that a company called Energy Ventures invested into the company, and it was a huge, huge success. So allowing us to move into different locations, but also allowing us to add equipment, capex, building new equipment, and getting new equipment sent overseas. And we also signed a major contract with Technip FMC, which gave us the opportunity to go from 3 employees up to 27. So in a space of 3 years, a huge, huge growth. Of course, we still have our difficulties with Houston. We had our business development guy over there, but what we found was we needed a business development guy, but also an operations person, which was proven to be very difficult, which meant I had to start spending a lot of time over there. So that wasn't part of the plan, but when I was over there, that was when I was seen to grab a lot of traction with our clients, being in their face, try to promote the business, but it's very, very difficult being an coming from the UK or internalization to go in and talking to these people over in Houston. It was very difficult to try and secure work, but we did a pretty good job of it. And then of course COVID hit. So the wonderful COVID, which I couldn't get over to Houston, we had to then let a couple of our staff go over in Houston because we couldn't get the work. So COVID was very, very detrimental to the performance over in Houston, but we kept the business open. We managed to keep one person on, but it was very much supported from our business here in the UK. So all the operations was done here, the invoicing was done here, sending offshore technicians was done from the UK. That wasn't part of our plan, but in order to keep the business going, that was some of the sacrifices we had to do. So very, very difficult when COVID came in, but we were very reliant, as everyone was, on Teams, but it's not the same as being in the same room, having conversations with our key clients, etc. So at the end of 2020, we achieved our DNV accreditation for NDT methods, which was a huge step in the right direction. And 2021, we launched our hose integrity management and then umbilical testing division. So again, another service offering onto what we've already got. And hopefully, when Houston achieves their budget and all the rest of our divisions achieve our budget, we should be on track to get hopefully 11 million worth of turnover for 2022. Next slide, Stacey. So our motive at a glance is one team, one motive. We're, in terms of the group, we've currently got just over 200 employees based around the world. So that's starting from the West and over in America, working all the way over to Taiwan, where we have all our hubs, going from America over to the UK, to Dubai, Norway, and our most recent one is over in Taiwan, where that is 100% renewable market. We have been working in over 48 countries around the globe. We have got over 1,000 assets currently out in hire or based over in all these locations. 5 bases, as I already touched on, and the group have in 2020 just passed our 10-year track record supporting clients in multiple sectors. Next slide.
Okay, 1 minute left, Ali.
Yeah, I'm nearly there anyway. So yeah, one team, one motive. That was the team that started off the motive spool and inspection division. Or the three of us in the black t-shirts, along with our group HSE manager. And on a space of 6 years, we've grew the division from 3 personnel, and the division to date, the spool and inspection division to date, has currently got 47 employees. So very, very good growth. Where Houston is very much a focus for us as we go forward into 2022, and the Americas market is very much a focus for the group, where we'll be focusing on maybe up the East Coast for the renewables, etc., when the time comes. But hopefully this information is of interest, and that we believe, next slide, Stacey, just the last one. We believe that collaboration is key, and of course, please reach out to me if my email address is there, if there's anything we can do or any advice that anyone would need about Houston, then I'll quite happily take any questions, etc. So thank you very much for your time, and again, thank you for asking me to come along and join your the Aberdeen Houston Gateway. It was very much appreciative, and I'll maybe see you all tonight.
Thank you very much, Ali. And that was, again, another Aberdeen company's experience in Houston, and that sort of feedback we value greatly. We've heard today a great deal about the investment climate and the challenges, but also the opportunities that setting up in Houston provides, and only further, I think, reiterating that strong relationship that we have between our 2 regions. Before we get into the Q&A, I'm going to use my chairman's privilege and thank some key people, and in particular our regional partners who've joined the Gateway event again this year. Gil Staley in the Woodlands, Chuck Martinez from Katy, and Vince Yoakum from Waller County, 3 very dynamic and growing regions in the greater Houston area. And a special thank you to my colleague, Jose Becerrio, our Energy 2.0 industry expert at the partnership. His role could not have come at a better time in the energy industry, is our feeling, and this event has certainly proved that. So, and a really big thank you for the companies, service providers and energy companies alike for your participation here. We do this for you. We do this because of you. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Brett or Stacey for questions or closing.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey, for doing a splendid job in chairing and keeping us to time. Once again, it's exactly 4 o'clock, so we are on schedule. I just would like to also thank all the delegates for the time. I know how busy everyone is, and also the fantastic case studies we've had today from EnerQuip, Add Energy, and Motive. They're all fabulous. And also, Andy, thank you for the unique and fabulous presentation and sharing your experience. It's great content, so we stick to time. Have we got any questions, Stacey, in the chat?
We don't actually have any questions. That's why I've stopped sharing this slide. But if anybody does have questions, everybody has my email address. You're more than welcome to forward them to me, and I can pass it on to any of the presenters.
That's fine. Okay, so I think really all it remains for me to do is say a very good thank you and good morning, Houston, and good afternoon, Aberdeen.
Thanks, Brett, Stacey.
And also,